Hey guys, Sean here, and I'm dead chuffed to tell you that today's video is brought to you by Squarespace, which is just a little bit awesome. Tell you more about that now in a bit. What makes a good villain on screen? Is it the amount of kills they get? Is it the amount of just general damage they inflict on our heroes? Is it the fact that some of them have the most incredible voices ever, and I really miss Christopher Plummer? Anyway, what was I talking about? Oh, that's right, villains. And in particular, villains in the Star Trek movie universe. We've got quite a few of them, so we're gonna bounce straight into our rankings. I am Sean Ferrick for Trek Culture, and this is every Star Trek movie villain ranked from worst to best. 19, yep, 19. Admiral Dougherty. Now, okay, let's cut the guy a bit of a break here. He was a pencil pusher. Didn't look quite like Carl Weathers' pencil pusher in Predator, but hey, look, the man did okay. He teamed up with the Sonar for what he thought was a fair, good reason that could help the Federation. If he had stopped to look for 2 seconds, he would have known exactly what this was. So he's on this list because he is a villain. He does send the Sonar after the Enterprise E. I mean, that's pretty bad, but he does come good in the end, so split the diff. 18, KRALL. Another kind of officer turned bad. Now this one doesn't turn good again. He just kind of turns into some sort of vampire creature. Star Trek Beyond is a good film. Okay, I enjoy Star Trek Beyond. It's good fun. KRALL's not great, I won't lie. Idris Elba, brilliant in everything. Please, Idris Elba, be in more things. The character was written just a little bit thin. There wasn't really much to him, so he scores so low on this because I couldn't honestly give him anything else to bump him up the list a little bit. Fun to see him in the Enterprise era, you know, uniform. We see his breakdown kind of through logs, but generally KRALL is grrr, bad guy, genocide, meh. 17, Khan, Into Darkness. Listen, Benedict Cumberbatch is a brilliant actor. He is, okay? And he is very good in Star Trek Into Darkness. However, Star Trek Into Darkness, it is a gentle remake of The Wrath of Khan, and it's the similarities that hurt it. So obviously we know Khan will be turning up again in this list, and the fact that the filmmakers decided to hamper themselves by locking themselves into having this character meant immediately there was going to be comparisons, and with all respect to Mr. Cumberbatch, it just didn't cut the muster. If he had been John Harrison, I think he would have scored a little bit higher on this list, but sorry. 16, the whale probe. Now, okay, right, before you say it, you know, but hang on, it's a probe, it's not villainous. I have a feeling some of Earth's oceans might have something to say about that. Anyway, bloody good film, we love the whales, and the probe f***s off. Still scores better than KRALL. Now, 15 is V'ger. Now, in terms of power, V'ger could potentially top this list, but because V'ger is not villainous in the true sense. Yes, the Klingon battle cruisers are destroyed, Epsilon 9 is destroyed, Lieutenant Ilea is destroyed. These are bad things. Bold V'ger. However, it is doing everything because it's trying to fulfill its purpose. And the evolution of V'ger at the end of the film to become a new life form by joining with Decker, it makes for an incredibly compelling story. Definitely recommend you check out our documentary on the motion picture. Big up to Michael Kamet and Chris for making that stunning thing, but there's a lot more to V'ger than that. Yes, villainous because of the destruction, not the villainiest villain, shall we say. 14 is kind of a double one here, Sybok and God. It's because as Sybok becomes not a villain, God becomes a villain. So that's kind of why they're sharing the spot here. Sybok gets control of the Enterprise A. Like, he does good, he gets the ship. And he does it all by talking. He doesn't beat anybody up. Yes, okay, he's stronger than Kirk. There is that little tussle outside the shuttle, but he just talks his way in. Now I know it's a strange one because it's heavily implied he hypnotizes people. Does he? So, whatever, nearly 30 years later, in fact more than 30 years later, and the jury's still out on that one. But as they get to Shakari, he surrenders control of the Enterprise back to Kirk. He absolutely agrees and respects the authority of the Federation. His entire purpose was to go and find God. And find God he does, or the being calling itself God. George Murdoch, great to see him as God. And then the less said about the end of the film, the better. Hello my beautiful little Trekkies, how are you? I know, you're like, Sean, we're already watching a video, stop interrupting, but I have great news. I am going to talk to you about our collaboration with Squarespace. Now, what is Squarespace, I hear you ask? Well, come on now. Where have you been? Because Squarespace is only one of the most fabulous sites for building and maintaining domains that is out there. I know, pretty incredible. If you want to host a blog, Squarespace has got you covered. If you want to send out a newsletter where you compare all of the different uniforms in all of Trek, even though we all know the Monster Maroons are the best, Squarespace has you covered. Thanks to its unreal third-party tools as well as all of the widgets on it, you can literally design this site to look like anything and to help you manage anything. With that, we have been working closely with Squarespace to design a new store where we can pass our beautiful, beautiful designs on to you. We can finally get a shirt that has Trek culture across the front of it, and you know what? We might even include an old nipple shot or two. That's what we'll do for you. But it's not the only thing we'll do for you, because I am here for you today to talk about a cheeky little discount. If you go to www.squarespace.com/Trek Culture, you will get 10% off your first purchase of a domain or site. That's www.squarespace.com/Trek Culture. Guys, I'm really excited to use this. I really hope you should be excited to use this too. Please keep that t-shirt in mind, and let's get back to the video. Thanks. 13. The REMAN Viceroy. Ron Perlman scared the absolute shit out of me in 2002. I mean, come on. I mean, at this point, we were coming up to the end of, you know, that incredibly popular vampire show on TV, and this vampire, this one right here in Star Trek Nemesis, that scared me. Anyway, he is chewing all the scenery in a really oddly understated performance that the look of the Remans were terrifying enough on their own. He is a little bit lower down this list because he has less to do than Shinzon does, and he really should have beat Riker in that fight. Not that I wanted Riker to lose, but aren't the Remans supposed to be the badasses of the galaxy? 12. NERO. NERO creates a universe. NERO creates a universe. Okay? That's pretty big. And also, NERO kills Kirk's dad. I mean, who does that? Well, NERO does, I guess. Eric Bana is great in Star Trek 2009. The film it's a breath of fresh air into the franchise. Now, like it or hate it, that's totally fine. But in the film itself, Eric Bana sells his performance. Now, he's obviously mad with grief, and there's an entire 20-year period that's just left on the cutting room floor. But with what we see, he's actually damn good. He poses a real threat. Plus, he has fun. Hi, Christopher. I'm Nero. Yeah, I like him. 11. Valeris. Valeris, she's disappointingly great. You know, you really wanted her to be the protege that Spock needed her to be. Now, behind the scenes, obviously, she was going to originally be Saavik, but they couldn't get Robin Curtis back, they weren't getting Kirstie Alley back, and Kim Cattrall didn't want to be the third actor to play the same character, and so Valeris was created. I'm kind of glad myself. I like the idea of Saavik being a good Vulcan, but Cattrall nails it in this role. Valeris is one of the understated villains. She absolutely believes in what she's doing. She sells it. Valeris is good. Valeris is definitely good. Well, she's bad, that's the point. 10. the DURAS sisters. It was great that they were in the movie. It was terrible they were in the movie because that was a surefire death sentence. In fact, Robert O'Reilly once commented on that in an interview to say he was delighted not to have been cast for that very reason. Lursa and B'Etor, I mean, if there's any scenery left, they're chewing it. It was brilliant, and it was great to see how much they just weren't taking stuff seriously. You know, they were just flying around, old Klingon bird of prey, and you know what? They destroyed the Enterprise D. Well done. Well done. It is a shame, of course, that their reign of terror was brought to a close by one photon torpedo and a bit of reused footage, but look, at the end of the day, they were brilliant in Star Trek Generations, which I am glad to say is beginning to get the love it always deserved. 9, sticking with the Klingon theme here, Commander KRUGE from Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. This guy wasn't very nice, really. And I think he had a completely misjudged kind of view of patriotism. He said that he was, you know, stealing the Genesis data for the good of the Empire. He thought the Genesis planet was going to be this staging ground from which the Federation would begin their assault on the Klingons. And obviously no. But he goes so far as to destroy the Grissom. Yes, I know he only ordered it to be fired upon, but it didn't exactly break him up, did it? And then goes ahead, takes prisoners, and has one of them executed. And therein lies why he's so high on this list. He doesn't just have a prisoner executed, he kills Kirk's son and is, in his actions, responsible for the destruction of the original USS Enterprise. That's a pretty impressive kill count. 8, RU'AFO. F. Murray Abraham, Star Trek Insurrection, for his performance alone, should score higher on many people's rankings. Now, it gets kind of forgotten because it's one of those, it's almost called a long episode, which is a strange criticism to give a film based on a show you love. But F. Murray Abraham totally revels in his role. Now, he's a villain from the off. There is no joke that he is a good guy, and that's fine. That kind of makes Admiral Dougherty look a bit more like a fool, but it also shows who's in control here, who's got the power. And F. Murray Abraham, I just love that name, is the perfect choice for this role. Anyone who's seen the film, that image of him screaming and the cut opening up on his face and running down, that'll stay with you. And it sure stayed with me when I was 11 and watching this in the cinema. 7, Admiral Alexander Marcus. Peter Weller, what he brought to Star Trek Into Darkness probably not saves the film, because there's a lot good going on in that film, but it certainly elevates the film. I mean, again, this guy's a baddie. He is going to preemptively start a war with the Klingons because he thinks the Klingons are going to start a war with him. Okay, interesting logic. So he goes ahead, has his vengeance built, so misjudged. Everything he does is misjudged, and yet he is so much fun in doing it. You really believe that if there was to be a war, this is the guy you want leading the charge. Now, he gives himself away when he confesses to Kirk that he was never going to spare the Enterprise or their crew, so his fate is a bit deserved, really. Okay, it's a little bit gruesome, but it's a bit, he was never walking away from that one. But definitely in that film, he is the more interesting villain that's on show. 6, Shinzon. Tom Hardy got a lot of stick back in 2002 because Nemesis absolutely flopped at the box office. And some people singled out his performance as the responsibility for that, and that's just not fair. He's excellent in this film. He does his best, both imitation of and take on Patrick Stewart, because he couldn't just be a copy and paste performance, because Shinzon is a completely different character, and yet you can still see Picard in his portrayal. By the end, of course, he's become just a straight up villain, but he still manages to have some sort of gravitas to him. Now, you must remember, Tom Hardy was very young in doing this film. So this is early days. Now, you'd think, yeah, of course, we've seen him as Bane and all these characters, not a bother to him. Back in 2002, he took a chance. From his point of view, it didn't work out. But again, like Generations, I think Nemesis is aging well with time. Shinzon is a great villain. 5, Dr. Tolian Soren. The man killed Kirk. I mean, 4. The Borg Queen. Now, Alice Krige, oh my god, did she deliver on this promise. When the Borg were going to be brought into Star Trek First Contact, there was going to be an issue if the only villain of the piece was the Collective, because while the voice of the Collective is quite scary, as far back as the Best of Both Worlds, Locutus was created for the exact reason of not having to talk to a bodiless voice. So, bringing it to the big screen, it made sense. Thus, the Queen was born, with one of the best entrances of any character in cinema ever. So well done. Now, Alice Krige, of course, returned to the role in Voyager's Endgame, having taken over from Susanna Thompson, who took over from her. Both actresses absolutely nailed this part. But I remember, here's a funny story for you, from my youth. The year it came out, there was a show on Irish television where it was part of the press junket, and Alice Krige was on that show. Now, for whatever reason, I missed it, but I, to this day, remember my sister asking me, why was there a lady covered in Vaseline in the new Star Trek film? And you know what? She wasn't wrong. 3. Admiral Cartwright. Now, this man scores so highly on this list because of the position he started from. He wasn't the CNC of Starfleet, but he was basically the next step down. He was a highly decorated admiral who conspired with Klingons to destroy any burgeoning peace between the two superpowers, and he conspired to have his own president assassinated. Brock Peters, unbelievably good in this role. He had obviously been introduced in Star Trek 4, where he was a good admiral, and for a lot of this film he's also a good admiral. And he seems to be on the same page as Kirk. Kirk, of course, expresses his dislike for Klingons, and Cartwright kind of goes, I don't know whether to congratulate you or not. And once his actions become clear, that little sentence becomes a little bit clearer, because he knows who's going to be implicated in murders. He is thankfully found out and arrested, and it's with a real sense of disappointment that he is taken away. Any officer's betrayal is disappointing, but for a character that high up, and it really showed just how serious this conspiracy was. 2, sticking with Star Trek 6, General Chang. Christopher Plummer, wherever you are now, I just hope you know how many Trekkies are watching Star Trek 6 again these days. Chang just, I mean, if there's scenery to be chewed, he chews it. It's so good. His delivery of the Shakespearean lines, he is, to quote him, reveling in this part. He is having fun. He is the boss. The entire final scene between the Cloaked Bird of Prey and the Enterprise A is effectively him reading the works of Shakespeare, and yet it stands out as one of the best scenes in any Star Trek film. That's just how good he is. The courtroom scene where he channels Adlai Stevenson is also phenomenal, but really it's just any time Chang speaks, you listen, and that is the sign of a bloody good villain. Number 1. I presume there was no doubt about this, guys. He tasks me. He tasks me and I shall have him. I'll chase him round the moons of Nibia and round the Antares maelstrom and round perdition's flames before I give him up. God, I hope I got that quote right. He is the best villain of Star Trek, with a certain Cardassian just tipping at his tail. Ricardo Montalban defined what it is to be bad in Star Trek, and I mean that in the good way. His final act, I mean the whole film is incredible, and he is incredible. He was great in Space Seed as well, but his final act, it's sheer demented joy as he believes he's just killed Kirk and his entire crew by activating the Genesis torpedo. He dies a happy man. In his mind, he's won. And the fact that he's covered with burns and his crew are dead around him and it's cost him everything, this Ahab got what he wanted and gave us the best villain in all of Star Trek. And that's it for our list this week. If you think we missed anything, please stick it into the comments below. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. You can catch us over on Twitter at Trek Culture. You can catch myself at Sean Ferrick on Twitter as well. Remember, revenge is a dish best served cold. Oh, and live long and prosper.